Okay, folks, welcome back to Battle for Azeroth. Let's talk PvP, shall we? More specifically, why I think Battle for Azeroth PvP is a bloody disaster. A couple things to mention first before we get into it. With the start of Season 2, a lot of people were expecting vendors would be put in so you could purchase Season 1 PvP gear. And as it stands so far, there are no vendors to buy Season 1 PvP gear. I looked, I couldn't find any. I looked online, I couldn't find any. There's speculation that, as with everything else's expansion, it's going to be added later. Of course, there is no guarantee. A bit strange since they added vendors for every other past PvP season. And in Legion, especially, after every season ended, the gear was given to a vendor, so you could just go buy it with marks of honor. So, bit strange. The second thing is that with the changes they made to the PvP system in Battle for Azeroth, they seem to have apparently taken away Vicious Saddles, which I only mention because the vendors are still in Stormwind and Orgrimmar that sell the mounts that require the Vicious Saddles, which, again, I thought maybe I had missed something during Season 1. Looked through achievements thinking maybe it was like an achievement thing, or maybe as you leveled up your ranking, maybe Vicious Saddle would be a reward somewhere along the line. As far as I can tell, there is no clear explanation for how you are supposed to get them now. So, again, a bit strange. So why do I think that Battle for Azeroth PvP is a disaster? Been thinking about it for a while. Been thinking about it since Season 1. Haven't really enjoyed myself either season, whether it be Season 1, Season 2. Played about the same in both. Depending on when 8.1.5 is released, both these seasons could be about the same length. So I think it's pretty fair to judge them somewhat evenly. And every time I kept thinking about it, I kept feeling like I was overcomplicating what should be a very simple issue. And it finally occurred to me recently that the biggest problem with Battle for Azeroth PvP is that it lacks, there is no motivation. It lacks incentive for players to keep playing. And there is one reason, I have one complaint for this, and that is the change, as I mentioned, to the PvP mount reward system. With the previous system, you had to get 40 rated battleground wins or win 100 arenas. You would get a Vicious Saddle, you could go to the vendor, you could choose the mount reward you wanted. Fairly simple. Was not easy, but was not difficult. Really, a lot of variables. Depended on your group, depended on the time of day you played. For the most part, I enjoyed it. I had fun. That was what I spent most of Legion doing. I got those achievements twice during 2 different seasons, and I got them 4 times. I got them on my Alliance character, and I got them on my Horde character. And that was fine. That was, as I said, I enjoyed myself. That was fine. This at first I asked myself why, and I kind of thought that was the issue. That was the problem I had. I said, here, they're just mucking about, changing things for no reason. And I want to be clear, I don't mind the change to the gear system. You know, needing to get 500 conquest to get a reward, that's fine. Getting a weekly chest, that's fine. Those are all improvements as far as I'm concerned. Gear has always been a problem in PvP. However, what seems to be detrimental, why I have no motivation to keep playing, is here I've won 16 games. You have to, with the new system, you have to achieve the rank of combatant, which requires a rating of 1400. And then after that, at least the way my original understanding was, after that, any wins you receive will count towards your season reward, your PvP mount. Now, you may be wondering, well, wait a minute, you have 16 wins and nothing's counted. Yes, because apparently what I learned during Season 2 that I did not realize during Season 1 is that you have to maintain the ranking of 1400 or above for the wins to count. Yeah. And to that I ask, why? There was nothing wrong with the old system. Nobody complained about the old system. As I said, it wasn't easy. You weren't just handed them out. It wasn't overly difficult. You just went and you played as you normally would. And after, after 40, either 40 Battleground wins or 100 Arena wins, you got a little bit of a reward for your time. This, I see no value to this. I see no point to this. And in fact, in large part, I would say the game, the quality of the groups and the games has actually declined. There are very few, if any, alliance groups playing rated. That was the problem I found during Season 1. Was I could never seem to find a rated alliance group. So I switched over to Horde, and during Season 1 was able to get up to round 15. I was pretty close to getting the next rank, which is, well, I don't know now, because apparently I have unranked somehow. I was fairly close. I think it's Challenger. I was fairly close to getting the next rank, so I was trying to kind of push a little bit. I thought, oh, well, that would be cool. And I just kept deranking and deranking and deranking. And eventually I just kind of lost motivation because everybody was talking about, oh, Season 2 will be out pretty soon. I was doing other things with it still being, fairly not long after the game, the expansion had launched. So I said, okay, that's fine. I'll make a bigger push for Season 2. And it seems like they don't know which direction they're going with the game, because on one hand they dumb it down so each class is simpler to play, then they seem to make everything you do more complicated, with the thinking somehow being, well, if it's more complicated, it will be more fun. It will be more enjoyable. And I've never quite understood that logic. I mean, if you want, a difficult challenge in getting a mount, do one of the secret mounts. Even with the guides, if you don't want guides, just don't look up any guides. If you want guides, even with the guides, some of the puzzles and different things you have to do can still be quite complicated from what I hear. The default answer you seem to get with any type of criticism in this game now is, well, you should do high level PvP. That's the answer. Either do, you know, mythic raids or mythic dungeons, or you should be doing high level PvP. You don't use voice, you play low level. And I'm not complaining about that. I'm not complaining about losing. I'm not complaining about bad groups. You can have a bad level group that has voice and is a little higher ranked just as well as you can have a bad group that is just a random group of players. What I am complaining about is here I have 15 wins. I'm almost halfway, 16 wins. I'm almost halfway to having my 40 rated battleground wins. And none of it has counted. I'm doing more work to essentially achieve the exact same thing. Why? I don't. Now I have come up with, in my thinking of why, you know, what didn't I like about this? I did come up with two reasons for why things are like they are. Certainly, subnumbers, I'm sure, play a factor. We don't know what the subnumbers are. Most people consider them to be fairly low, around 5 million or below, give or take. I would say that's pretty fair. This Battle for Azeroth is probably the only the expansion of the 4 that I have played from start to finish. Now this will make... Yes, this will make my 4th. Well, 4.5. Yes. Of the 4 I have played, I've probably had the longest queue times across the board for everything with this one. Which should tell you something. And it's not as though there are very few alliance groups playing rated PvP. I mean, there are none. Like 90% of the groups that I end up facing off against as Horde are also Horde groups. The other thing that I kind of wondered was if War Mode didn't have a effect on people just kind of saying, you know what, this is just not for me. I'm just not going to do it, because there's a bit of a difference between open world PvP and battleground PvP or arena PvP. War Mode, I think it's fairly obvious to say at this point in time, has not worked out like they intended it. They thought it would. They really pushed the incentives and said, hey, if you have this on, you'll get extra gold, you'll get extra experience, you'll do this, you'll do that. And for leveling at max level, if you're trying to get from 110 to 120, it's fine. Outside of that, if you're below that, you might as well turn it off, because you're going to get one-shotted by some max level player. And once you've actually reached 120, the inconvenience, I'll say, of trying to do world quest and trying to do your war campaign and all of that versus continuously getting killed by 2 or 3 of the opposing faction is just, in my opinion, it's not worth your time. By the time you have to go run back to your body and whatnot, and people like to camp your body now, it's just not worth the inconvenience. The extra gold, the extra resources, what have you, that you're going to get, it just does not justify the inconvenience that it can turn out to be. I was really excited for War Mode, and I've been somewhat disappointed. I've tried to find groups for it to do world PvP and things like that. I mean, I have tried to give it the benefit of the doubt. And it's just not, it's just not a improvement with the way the current game is. And then they introduced it in a expansion where they did a stat squish. So your health is lower. Your damage, your healing, everything is lower. I don't care how good of a PvP player you are. I have yet to see anyone that can do a 1v2 or 1v3 and survive to tell about it. This is not vanilla WoW. That may have been true at one point one day. In fact, I know for a fact it was. There are many tales of rogues and mages, whatnot, ceasing and damaging and using their specs and exploiting things and what have you to do that. That is not the case, sadly, now. It's disappointing because I started PvPing pretty heavily in Legion. That was, as I said, how I spent most of Legion. And now I just kind of don't even want to do it. I look for other things to do. In fact, I have been finding other things to do because I'm like, it's not worth wasting 15 minutes, if that, to try to find a group, to go in, and you're at a point now where, like, right from the start, games are kind of won or lost. You can kind of tell which way they're going to go. Sometimes you're wrong. Sometimes the group does bounce back and you're able to at least make a decent effort. In some cases, you're even able to win depending on the battleground. But something like Eye of the Storm, that one can go back and forth several times. I get more... As I said, it's not bad. I'm not complaining about losing or bad groups or anything else. What really upsets me with PvP, generally speaking, is when people don't follow objectives. By this point in the game, by the time you are 120, ideally, you've already tried PvP. Granted, there are people, I'm sure, that are somewhat newer to the game. They just kind of do the same thing, and then they're like, oh, let's try some other things out. That's fine. Generally speaking, though, most of us that do this will have done PvP of some description before we've reached max level. We should know what to do. We should know to focus on killing the healers and to focus on the flag carriers and to guard the bases and when to defend and when to go after a base, what have you. We should know these maps by now. And yet you have games where it's like people have never done this before. And it's not just one or two, it's like the entire group. And in large part, with all the PvP I've done, in some cases I feel like it's detrimental, because if people actually, stopped fighting mid and got the flags and went to their bases and focused on the healers and did all this, you'd have, I feel like, far more interesting games. And I think you would have more people that would want to play, rather than the attitude of, oh, we're fighting mid, we're going to lose. Or, oh, we lost that base, we're going to lose. Or they've capped a flag, we're going to lose. How many, for those of us that have played PvP, how many games have we played where we'll be doing Warsong Gulch? The opposite team will cap a flag and people just start to leave. One flag, you need to cap 3 to win. And there have been quite a few games where it's been 1-1-2 or 1-1, what have you. Even if you both cap a flag, whoever caps last wins. You can't, as far as I know, you can't tie if you both cap a flag. Generally, the rule is whoever caps last wins. There have been so many games recently that have been draws because all people did, nobody followed the objectives. All people did was fight mid or fight over a base, or everybody went to one Azeroth deposit or something, and that was it. We wasted most of our time because we think that our DPS and our healing numbers actually mean something in PvP. They don't. The only thing that matters in PvP is the objective. And I think in part, I think it's aside from everything else, generally speaking, if you were to pull everything back and say, well, what's the biggest deterrent? I feel like it's the attitude people have towards PvP. PvP is really not taken all that seriously. That's why I like playing rated PvP, because it is taken a little more seriously. Granted, it's a game. As I've been saying, you still have to follow the objectives. That's the only way you're going to win. Having higher level DPS is not going to get you any better of a reward, win or lose. Same with healing. Having higher healing is not going to get you any better reward, win or lose. Having one or the other, having top DPS or top heals is not a guarantee you're going to win. Anybody that tells you it is lying. I've seen it for myself several times. I've been a healer, and people have said, oh, if our healers were better, we could have won this, what have you, da-da-da-da. I've been in games where everybody on my team, we were like the top 3 healers. We still lost. Top DPS still lost. Because the other team followed the objective. They didn't stop and fight mid. They didn't stop and fight over a base. They didn't do this, they didn't do that. Now, whether you want to argue, oh, they had voice, or they were a pre-made group, or what have you, that's fine. That is debatable and is subject to game by game. It's disappointing not just for myself. It's disappointing because this could be a really fun thing in the game to do. And it seems to be, and to a degree PvP always has been, it seems to be in a slow decline. And either nobody knows what to do or nobody notices. They said during Legion, before Legion came out, they've neglected PvP. They were going to try to focus more on PvP. Okay, I give them credit for that. I give them the benefit of the doubt for that. But is this really any better? I would say no. And more to that effect, I think it's starting to show in-game quite a bit the longer we go on. I'll be very curious if, in fact, we are close to Season 3, if they end this with the 8.1.5 patch. I will be interested to see what Season 3 is like, because it seems like there's been a slight decline between Season 1 and Season 2. Seems like people kind of came back at the beginning, and then after the week was over, people kind of went on and did other things. Seems to be what I'm noticing. I'm not even seeing as many high-level groups as I have in the past. So there you go, folks. So a little bit of my thoughts on Battle for Azeroth PvP. Hope you enjoyed that, and thank you for watching.